So did you ever want to spawn and move some enemies along a path? Maybe for your next tower defense game? Cause in Godot, you can do that with just 2 built-ins and a few lines of code. Actually, I've even used this technique myself in typedev, my new typing tower defense game that is currently in development. This is how I made my enemies, the escaping data packets, follow the route in the middle of the level, so that they can be targeted by the processor towers. But so now, let's see how you can do this in your Godot games too. Okay, suppose we've got a basic 2D level like this one. Here I've got a couple of tile maps that show the base terrain and the plants or rocks decoration on top of it, but of course even the base tile map, with the path drawn onto it, is just a visual component. This doesn't actually tell my game what path my enemies should follow, it's just for our human eyes. To really define the enemy's path, we can use the aptly named path2d node. This built-in allows us to manually draw a curve, point by point, and so we'll be able to create whatever path we want very easily. So first, make sure that you've selected the new path2d node, and that you're currently in selection mode. Then, you'll be able to use the path-specific command buttons in the toolbar at the top of the viewport over here to either modify, smooth, add or remove points from your path. Typically, let's start by selecting the Add tool and clicking in our level where we want to place our path points. You see that every click adds a new point to the path, and they're automatically linked together in the order we define them. Of course, once you're done creating your overall path shape, you can always use the Modify tool to better position your points, or even the second tool that creates handles on those points and smooths out the curve around them to get non-straight lines. But for now, I'm just gonna stick with straight paths here, and we'll talk about those handles a little bit later on in this tutorial. Also, to be sure they totally match my visuals, I can even go to the Path2D's inspector, open up the curve property, and manually readjust the point's position. Here I want them to be multiples of 128 pixels, since my tile map uses cells that are 128 by 128. But anyway, in the end, you should therefore have a basic 2D path that matches your visuals, like this one. The next step is to actually move objects along this path, and for that we can use another really cool Godot built-in, the pathfollow2d node. Basically, if we add a pathfollow2d as a child of our path2d node, then by going to the pathfollow2d's inspector and updating its progress property, you see that we're dragging this element along our 2D path, and the great thing is that it automatically follows every little twist and turn without us having to worry about it. Now, to really see what we're doing, since this pathfollow2d node is a plain marker, what we'll do is we'll instantiate an object. For example, I'm using a tank visual I prepared beforehand, and that is just a set of sprites, and so we'll instantiate it as a child of our pathfollow2d. So what we've now got is the path2d node at the top, then the pathfollow2d node inside, and the visual inside this pathfollow2d. And so with this setup, our pathfollow2d will move automatically, along with all its children, along our 2D path, and so you can check that it works as expected if, once again, you update the progress property of the pathfollow2d. Okay, with this in place, let's dive a bit more into what properties the pathfollow2d node offers. At the top, we've got the progress parameter that we already know about, but there's also just below the progress ratio parameter. That's simply a normalized version of the progress property. It will be 0 when the node is at the start of its parent path, and 1 when it's at the end. This can be useful to check if we've reached the end of the path, for example, as we'll see very soon, but you should also be careful that if you move your pathfollow2d using its progress ratio property, then its speed will depend on the total length of your path. The next important thing is that, by default, pathfollow2d nodes loop, meaning that when you go above the length of their parent path, they wrap back at the beginning. Here, this isn't what we want. We want our enemies to walk the path only once, so we'll toggle the loops property off. Finally, something very nice is that pathfollow2ds can match the orientation of their parent path, thanks to this rotate property that is enabled by default. This is why, if we zoom in on the first corner in our path, and we start to move our enemy along the route, we see that when it reaches this corner, it rotates along with the path and it looks the right way directly. So now if we imagine that we have multiple path follow 2D nodes with visuals for each, and they all have their own progress value, then we'll basically have multiple enemies spread on our path, just like in a real tower defense game. So what we'll do is we'll remove our duplicate, rename our path follow 2D node to enemy, and save this basic subhierarchy as a new enemy asset in our project. Now, of course, if we open up this new asset scene, we'll get a warning on our root node, because Godot tells us that a path follow 2D needs to have a path 2D parent to work, as we've just seen, but this will be the case in the end, because what we'll be doing is we'll create instances of this enemy prefab in our main scene as children of our path 2D node. First, however, let's give a script to our enemy to have it move along the path automatically. The script is very basic. We just define our enemy's speed, and remember that since we're working in 2D, in Godot it's in pixels, so it should be a pretty large number. And then we use the process hook to continuously increment the progress value of our enemy and move it forward. Note that I'm multiplying the speed by the delta input parameter of the process hook, so that it's smooth and consistent between computers. And finally, I use the normalized progress ratio to check if the enemy reached the end of the path, in which case I just delete it from the scene. Of course, feel free to play around with the exported speed parameter in the enemy's inspector to make them move more or less slowly. The next step is to go back to our main scene, remove our current test enemy instance, and put a script on our main root node so that there is some logic that spawns enemies in our level. And again, this logic is actually quite straightforward. So first we get a reference to our enemy prefab scene. We can either preload it, or especially in C# it's usually easier to export it to have it referenced in the inspector. Then below we get a reference to our path 2D node, since this will be the parent of all our enemy instances. And I'm also connecting the timeout signal of a spawn timer to the spawn enemy function. This spawn timer is, as the name implies, a timer node that I put in the main scene, left to a 1 second delay, and set to auto start when the scene is run. So basically, by connecting its timeout signal to my spawn enemy callback, I'm saying that as soon as the demo starts, every second, the spawn enemy function will be executed. And so what this callback method does is it creates a new instance of our enemy prefab scene, and it adds it as a child of our path 2D node. So there we go. If we run our demo, we see that we regularly spawn a new enemy at the beginning of our 2D path that starts to automatically move forward, turns when it reaches a corner, and progresses through the entire level, before finally reaching the end of the route, and disappearing because it's freed from the scene. Now, as I mentioned before, if you want the path to feel a bit more natural, and if you want to avoid those harsh turns, remember that you can always curve the path around your points, thanks to easing handles, so you might have to readjust your points a bit, but overall it will allow your enemies to actually walk along a curve, which is usually better than just a straight 90 degrees corner. So here's an example of how it could look, with smoother turns for the tanks, and a more natural path shape. Of course, then, if you're working on a real tower defense game, you'll probably want to have different types of enemies that have different speeds and colors, perhaps even health points. You'll want to be able to place towers, you'll want to have waves that start and end at some point, so there's a lot more that you can do after you've implemented just this basic tool. But tell me, is that something you'd like me to do a follow-up tutorial on? What other tower defense mechanics would you like me to talk about? Be sure to react in the comments and subscribe to the channel to get more videos. Of course, a huge thanks to my Patreon members for the support, and to you for watching. And as always, take care.